All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report Town Hall session. Let's see what you're saying on CBC real quick before we get into the elephant of the room in terms of the parental involvement and who should bear the cost. Let's see what you're saying. Let's bring that up at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. Mugasi says CBC must be properly regulated so that it is not turned into an extortion avenue of teachers exaggerating and making unrealistic demands from parents like pupils carrying chickens to school, which leads to an unbearable burden. Okay. Bore Collins says, with some fine-tuning, CBC will be an excellent curriculum. What the task force needs to do is listen to all the stakeholders. I would recommend that teachers undergo intense and professional training, not the hurried one we witnessed before. Okay? See what else you're saying here on Twitter. Let's see if we can squeeze in as many of them as possible. Jaya Gregor says, in my view, Kenya has not just reached that point to fully implement CBC. This curriculum is expensive to parents and to the government itself. I wish the government reconsiders the choice or work a clear plan towards implementing CBC. Okay? Mumbi Waweru says the government should increase funding to reduce the financial burden on parents, employment of more teachers to reduce the teacher's workload in class, and increase the interaction of the teacher and the learner. Okay? All right, let's see what else you're saying here on Twitter. Rick says CBC should not be used as a weapon not to employ graduates without CBC training. Instead, it should be included in the colleges and also in service training. All right? Colorado Tahiti says, change the education system, but also look at the mode of delivery. Stop giving pupils assignments. When will they find time to be innovative? Reward the students' innovation and watch how they will love going to school. Okay. Interesting recommendation there. Momanyi says, good debate. Did we eventually make a decision as a country where junior high school will be housed? There has been a lot of confusion. Furthermore, do we have the structures to support the transition? Okay. Agalio Fuete says, if the government is for CBC, let secondary schools handle junior secondary. No excuses. They received money for constructing new CBC classrooms. Let them receive learners too. Okay. See if we can squeeze in maybe two more here. Gerishon Muturi says, good discussion. How's the task force collecting views on digital platforms or social media and emails? All right. Blessed Fanuel says, in 804 training of a high school teacher takes 4 years. In CBC, teachers were trained in just a week and expected to handle junior secondary. Kindly comment on this. Okay. Training of that. Jemima, you'll talk about the training of the hurried training. Belha says, very true, Jemima. I trained once, but fully teaching CBC. We need more training to unlearn 844. Getting it rough. Much needs to be done in schools. Okay. And Arab Koro says it is really justified that is it really justified that we leave 2 empty classes in every primary school to construct the same classes in secondary schools? Okay. It's an interesting question there. Jemima, we were talking about the structure earlier on, but now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the involvement of parents. And who should bear that cost? There has been confirmation from people that some of the teachers, your fellow teachers, are sending students to bring in cooking oil, bring in chicken, bring in fish to be cooked in school. Are they simply being overzealous? Or who should bear the cost of this training, and how much should parents be involved?
Now, before I respond to who should bear the costs, you are talking about involvement of the parent. When you look at CBC, there is that part of the parent engagement. And I think we misunderstand or we do it in the wrong way. As a parent, you are supposed to engage yourself. You are not supposed to do the assignment. And if at all the things that are needed by the teacher are locally available, we are allowed to improvise using the locally available materials. You can use banana leaves and make a mat, right? Like the first MLP, the learners were supposed to sweep the market. I'm telling you, Trevor, we have markets all over. We can improvise a broom and sweep the market. So for me, I can see, when you look at the core competencies, creativity and imagination, we are supposed to be very creative and solve a problem. Problem solving is one of the competencies in CBC. So we should work more on the competencies for us to achieve an objective together with the teachers. Number 2, parent involvement in a school. You know, before you involve the parents, we have the stakeholders. We should have a strategy. Strategy number one, we should share the purpose for the parent to understand. Sawa sawa. Then number two, now we have the boundary management. I can tell you the other day we had a project where learners were supposed to rear a chick. You know, we have the rubric. And I'm supposed to have the steps in the analytic rubric where the learner is supposed to rear a chick until it lays the egg.
From chick stage
to lay eggs. And remember, this learner, before the chick lays eggs, should answer how many days do that hen take for the eggs to hatch. So, Trevor, if these parents become so difficult and says that I cannot afford a chick, how much is a chick? 100 bob. Through creativity and imagination, through problem solving, which is one of the competency, we can come together as parents. We share the purpose. We have boundary management.
Yeah.
We come up with a conclusion and say, in CBC, you can work individually, you can work in groups. Let's make it easy. I have 25 learners in that class. That is a group of 5. So each group can rear at one chick. So Trevor BJ, 500 divided by 25 parents. How much is that per parent?
But this is why we're saying then who bears that cost? Shouldn't that be borne by the school? So that the school says we are providing the chick, every learner.
Who are the stakeholders in education?
Oh. You tell me, you're the teacher.
A stakeholder is anybody who is interested in education.
But some of those parents are complaining that these things are too expensive. For example, you said that they can't be innovative. Yes. So how do you become innovative when you're supposed to fry 1 kg of meat?
When you're supposed to fry 1 kg of meat, with the healthy issues, hygiene issues, I will call my parents. I'll communicate to my parents. We agree. 1 kg of meat is 380 shillings. We are 10 parents. Can we contribute that 8 shillings? We purchase the meat, and then we do it together as a group in school. Some of these learners will learn practically. Others will learn through observation. And at the end of it all, the learner will have achieved an objective. And in my rubric, I'll be able to give a report. But Trevor, when you tell me that you cannot provide that chick among the 5 parents, and I'm supposed to observe the progress of these learners for me to update in my rubric, you are lying to me. And I'm not, as a teacher, I am not going to give a false report. We have to work together, me as a teacher, parent, and the school, to come up with a solution to help this child.
Yeah.
Remember, in this level, by the end of early years, the learner should achieve 1, 2, 3. Where will this learner achieve the skill? And remember, the difference between CBC and 844. With 844, it measured more on the knowledge. But with the CBC, we have knowledge, attitude, and the skill. Okay. And in future, when this learner now transits from junior secondary to senior school, where we have the paradigm shift of arts and crafts, social sciences, and STEM, through the skills that have been achieved in the journey of the early years in the learning experience, the learner will be able to fit in the right panel.
Yeah. Yes. Let me bring you George Williams on this, because we hear what Jemima is saying. She's the teacher. She's on the ground. She understands this concept. But the parents are simply saying it is too expensive. What do you recommend going forward when it comes to parental involvement? Because even in the secondary school where we were, no parent was ever asked to bring in sulfuric acid for chemistry practicals. I mean, the teachers and the school would take the expense and just provide it.
Well, Trevor, the last time we spoke about this, I did indicate that there is no education in the world that is not expensive. If we as a country believe that education is expensive, then perhaps we should try ignorance. And let's see how expensive ignorance is. Education in itself is supposed to be expensive, but the expense of education should be footed by the taxpayer, which means the every little expense that is foreseen has to be budgeted for. So when people talk about the expense of education and parental involvement, I hasten to say that it's not a curriculum issue. It is an implementation issue, and implementation sits at the Ministry of Education. We should be engaging the people who sit at the Ministry of Education, who are very able, I have met some of them, to plan better for how the cost of education is going to be covered. Now, looking at the involvement of parents and parents saying that it's too expensive for them, I think it is the failure of specific teaching groups in different schools to interpret the learning designs, the curriculum designs as designed by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Because there are options provided for each and every activity, yeah, to the extent that if it was going to cost parents so much money, then it's going to be a shared burden that reduces the burden on individual parents. But parents have to be involved in the lives of their children. Do not expect a teacher to be your child's mother and father. The responsibility of parenting your child is yours. It's not the responsibility of the teacher. The teacher is supposed to teach and give the learner opportunities for further learning in conversation with your parents and the people in your community. So the complaint for parents, as I have said before, that they are too involved in their children's life, is trying to escape the responsibility of parenting. It is in the right place, it should be encouraged, and I would not stop its continuance. Yes, for any reason.
All right, and Akelo, what we're saying is really practical. There are parents who simply cannot afford. What do you recommend going forward? I've been a teacher yours.
I think, Trevor, you have emphasized the elephant in the room, and I think, let me amend your elephant. The elephant in the room is funding education. That is the elephant in the room. In fact, that is the reason for which there's a lot of outcry in the implementation of CBC. Because education is a right of every child, and every child should attain the highest level, but it should also be free. The government must take responsibility. The curriculum design, as William said, is perfect, and it has given options for manipulating the local resources. And in this circumstance, if the school plans well with the direction from the Ministry of Education, then we shall not be having children or learners going to pick chicken from home. There will be a project in the school which supports home science, supports agriculture, and so on. But now the elephant in the room, as I know it, with regard to this, is what we call financing education. And in fact, that is where we call what meets the road.
The rubber meets the road.
The rubber meets the road at financing of education. In fact, it is good. It is also one of the TORs of the task force that we need to identify that who finances education in Kenya, so that if the government knows that they cannot give sufficient provision, then they should say that this is the burden that we have passed to the other stakeholders, the parents and otherwise. Secondly, home is the primary social environment for every learner. And for example, I think the member should have highlighted this. What does the parent expect? Like, for example, the parents of children who live in Nairobi. The social studies indicates that they should, in grade 6, they should know about their community, knowing their village, their ward, the name of the rivers in the region where they come from, and even the towns. What is so difficult about that? We are trying to move to go to looking at fish, chicken, and meat. But that is how parental involvement is.
Yeah.
The child will be, he will be knowing the village. You know, there are people in this country that when you ask them, which location do you come from? They don't know. So they hasten to write the location. They go to the local chief where they stay, that is where they come from. Yet, they come to a certain village in Kano or in Kisumu or in Suba West. So this is something which must be put in perspective.
Okay.
The elephant in the room about CBC is financing. Education, as William has said, is not a cheap affair. If we want to move, because it is a primary driver of socioeconomic growth, if we want to move, then we must be able to spend. Okay. We are now moving to a digital age where we must leverage learning using the technology itself.
Okay.
It is not going to be cheap for us. We must be able to say that who is financing this.
All right.
Yes.
All right. As we wind up on this conversation, George, there's never enough time to talk about CBC. What other recommendations do you make to the task force as they go in to listen to the people tomorrow? If you're in front of them, what would you say in summary?
I have two recommendations, one for the Presidential Working Party and the other one for parents. And I will start with the one for parents. I want to encourage the parents in this country to support the implementation of CBC because it's, in my view, more worthwhile to have a competent graduate who has skills, who has knowledge, and who has developed resilient attitudes to face the 21st century world. I think parents should stop trivializing the role of the teacher in the lives of their children and making jokes like the ones they make online and thinking that teachers are not well educated to know that they cannot ask kids to bring 25 chickens. Is it chickens or chicken into the classroom? Or bring 20 liters of cooking oil into the classroom. It's like we are taking the teacher as a fool and making fun of them online. I take a great exception when I see such things online. Being a teacher myself, and I think all the teachers in the country take offense at such kinds of jokes thrown at them. I would persuade parents to consider standing with their children and their children's teachers. Number two is to the task force. They should resist any attempt or any persuasion to return this country back to 844. It would be a grievous mistake in my own view, and I think the place to go is to target the senior people who sit at the Ministry of Education. This is something anyone will not tell you who sits in the system. But the greatest resistance, in my view, to CBC comes from the people from the Ministry of Education. So the training, first of all, needs to focus them so that they understand what CBC means, so they should stop fighting it.
Okay.
They should recommend strongly that people sitting at the Ministry of Education be trained to understand what CBC is.
All right. Jemima, what do you recommend?
I would recommend that, you know, we are breaking the old habits and we are supposed to adopt the new habits. So if you want to adopt new habits, programs that aim to change behaviors need to include very clear guidance on what is expected.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
On the other end, we have the indigenous, as the Kupet chair said, with the revised curriculum, the new design, the 2022 design, the indigenous languages are well taken care of. We have been taken through on each and every community. So that one is well catered for, and I appreciate. But for us to adopt new changes, we must adopt the competence of learning to learn. Okay.
I'm curious to know, you mentioned something about a cube of some sorts that has things that you test the learners with. I don't remember the name of it.
In CBC, we have different. We don't do exams. We do the assessments. Okay. There are two types. We have formative, and we have summative. Formative contributes to 20%, and it is the daily learning experience of the learner. any activity that is done in class, it is part of the assessment, which contributes to 80%. This 80% will be represented. We have the KICD design. In the KICD design, we have holistic rubric, which gives general report of the outcomes. Then in class as a teacher, I have the analytic rubric, which breaks down. If I'm talking about mathematical activity, and I'm talking about addition, we have different ways of doing addition or multiplication. You multiply through repeated addition, you do this through the repeated addition. So I am going to use the qualitative and quantitative analysis whereby I'm able to explain the learner consistently and correctly added or constructed this and this. So, in that way, I'm able to train the learner in 4, 3, 2, and 1.
So
that is an analytic rubric.
I'm curious to know this rubric that you're talking about that started with people cleaning the marketplaces.
Yeah, that is.
What else is there? What are some of the things, the highlights? There's the cleaning that was there, there's the cooking. What else have you seen?
By the time we have something that is known as an authentic task. A task that you give the learners. The learner, by the time you go to the market, I will use this rubric. The learner will identify the items that are used for cleaning. The learner will draw those items. The learner will color these items. So by the time you go to the market and clean, she has identified importance of cleaning and all that. So in the rubric, it is broken down, and I'm able to give a written report that the learner correctly, the learner consistently swept, practically through observation. So from there, it is when now I'll get the total percentage of the child for me to convince the parents that the learner was able to identify, drew, colored, but when we went to the practical part, he consistently or inconsistently did this and this. So that is why we have the assessment book that breaks down the whole story.
Okay. Akelo, what is your recommendation to the task force?
I think I will delve on the elephant in the room. That Parliament must ensure that Teacher Service Commission, the Ministry of Education are properly funded, first to provide infrastructure in schools and also to employ more teachers. Secondly, I think this is more radical and must be done because education has become so expensive because of a reliance on boarding schools. I would want the task force to talk about the categorization of our schools. And more importantly, to ensure that because currently we have got very many secondary schools in a ward which used to have just one secondary school currently has 10. And therefore the issue of transition from primary to secondary can easily be dealt with day schooling. And let us decategorize schools such that our boarding schools in this country, the public boarding schools, are the biggest private enterprises we have. And this one has made education more expensive for Kenyans.
Thank you so much for making time. Akelo Misori Kupet, Secretary General, Jemima Nyamai, CBC teacher and trainer, George William, curriculum specialist, and Professor Collins Odote, member of the CBC task force. They begin tomorrow. This is happening in Kwale, Taita Taveta, Marsabit, Nyandarua, Turkana, Kericho, Busia, Migori, Mandera, and Samburu. If you're there, go out there and give your submissions to the task force. All right? My name is Trevor Mbija. It's always a pleasure having you with us, and good night for now.